And this week, she highlights Billy White Shoes Johnson. Delilah, take it away. Take it away.
Hey, everybody. I like taking it back to the 70s and 60s and stuff. So, anyway, but Billy White Shoes Johnson, I like because he's, I love his personality. If you looked at old tapes, he was known as doing the chicken dance when he scored a touchdown in the end zone. That's literally what he was known for. He did it in college. That's where it started. And he took it into the professionals. And, he kind of set that tone for the touchdown celebration. He wasn't the first to do it, but he's the one who did it with swag. Right. Said, I'm going to put a dance to it. And he wore white shoes. Like, that was, literally White's his nickname. So it's you got to celebrate personalities that kind of pave the road for what these kinds of things, right? Not just the football, but the fun parts, right? Like the other stuff that we kind of don't think of, that people didn't really do, right? So anyway, he grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania. So he's a Pennsylvania boy. He says he felt fortunate because he grew up in a small town, so he had to mind his P's and Q's, because everybody watches everybody, right? So if you're from a small town, everybody knows everybody. You gotta, you gotta behave, because then by the time you get home, your mom and daddy knows what happened, right? And they'll just be like, they'll catch you in a lie, right? They'll be like, hey, so blah blah blah, and they just let you talk, right. And so he said, his father was a police sergeant. Which in a small town Pennsylvania, a black man as a police sergeant is a damn big deal. So his dad's a police sergeant. So again, that's another reason why he made sure, it's not that he didn't get in trouble, but it wasn't anything serious, right? It's just normal kid stuff. Mm-hmm. He said in an interview in 2020, he's like, I was blessed having good mentors coming up. Not to say I wasn't a knucklehead at times, but I was fortunate to learn from other people's mistakes. Learn from how other people had success with how they went about their jobs, their attitude, their demeanor, and I just tried to emulate that. As he reached his teens, he began playing all sorts of sports: football, baseball, basketball, and track. He said that in high school, when he would watch football on Saturdays and Sundays, he became a huge fan of this, New York Jets quarterback back in the day called Joe Namath. And what really drew him was that Joe Namath wore white shoes.
Yeah, he did.
And so he decided as a high schooler that he wanted his own white shoes. He was like, all right, I like this guy. I like that he's wearing these flashy white shoes. Now I want my own. And so he was also quoted as saying that we had a really nice shoe guy. Back in the day, we called them cobblers. He was an Italian guy. He was really good. We just got him some leather shoes. He did them, and they looked like they were bought. They were bought. He dyed 2 pairs, so he had one for practice and one for games. So he did have 1 pair, right? He had a pair for practice and a pair for games. So this was from high school. Right. Okay. So this is kind of, that sets the tone for the individuality that he was already building. So in high school, he's playing all these sports. He was like, I like this guy, Joe Namath. He's wearing white shoes. That's what I want to do. Right. And so that's kind of how, where that started, the white shoes part. So, all right. He was a very fast athlete, but he was only 5'9". And so that turned off a lot of the big universities at that time from actually recruiting him. So he actually ended up going to Widener College in Pennsylvania, which was a small Division III school. And, he became a member of Alpha Phi Sigma fraternity there, Alpha Sigma Phi fraternity. Fraternities are kind of like a big deal in a lot of the colleges and universities. One of the most colorful and amazing open field runners in that college football day, right? He graduated with over 20 school game, season, and career records. Wow. During his time at Widener, which was between 71 and 73, he shattered no less than 9 all-time NCAA marks, 12 Middle Atlantic Conference records. Johnson scored, this is college career, 62 career touchdowns, rushed for 3,737 yards, and accounted for 5,404 all-purpose yards. He was named All-American in 72 and 73 by the American Football Coaches Association and the Associated Press. Johnson was also part of the first class when it kind of happened, to be inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame later on in 1996. His play helped build a foundation for the national championship teams that would follow in that school. So again, little guy had to go to a small school, but he made the best of it, right? We kind of been talking about that today, right? Like the last few shows and stuff. So small guy, but he had to go to a smaller school, but he decided he's going to go do what he had to do, right? Not too long into his collegiate career, Johnson decided to have a little more fun. He wanted to break up the routine of a typical touchdown with a little flair. And so he was quoted as saying, "I decided that if I scored, I was going to do a dance." So he talked it over with his friends, his teammates and stuff. And he was like, "I think Soul Train was out at the time. It was like 1972 when it started. I'm going to dance." And then he kind of asked them, like, "What do you think we should do?" And that's where the funky chicken came from.
The funky chicken.
So he decided that, talking over with his teammates, saying like, Soul Train was out, people were dancing. He's like, "I gotta do something like cool, fun, whatever." And they came up with the funky chicken. Sure. And so that's how he came up with his touchdown celebration. He's like, it's easy to do, right? It's fun. And people thought it would be, he's like, people are going to think it's cool. And he's right. Like, people were all over it, like in college. Like, they loved it, right? They were like, and so the dance brought the whole crowd to their feet. And suddenly Johnson was a star in college, right? As I said, so in college, he was a kickoff returner. With his speed and quickness, again, he also played occasional offense. And then he was drafted by the then Houston Oilers. I don't know if you guys remember them. He drafted him in the 15th round of the 1974 draft. As a rookie, he began celebrating touchdowns again. He took that with him. So again, he took that whole style, his touchdown celebrations, doing the funky chicken. He took that into the NFL. At the time, before like the different rules and stuff, there was no penalties for that. So he was able to do that kind of stuff. Anyways, in his rookie year, Johnson started 5 games because this was also during the time with the weird strike guys. So like this, when he came in, the weird strike was happening. So there weren't a lot of guys playing. There were a lot of games played, right? And so just put that into context. So in his rookie year, he played 5 games, caught 29 footballs for 388 yards and 2 touchdowns. Okay. He also rushed for a 3rd score and had 409 punt return yards and 785 kick return yards. Again, this was all like his rookie year. 75 came. That's the season where he actually started every game. He hauled down 37 passes for 393 yards and a score. He also picked up 612 punt return yards for a league-leading 15.3 yards per average and 3 touchdowns and 798 kick return yards with another score. Insane numbers as a kick returner. Basically, they're also saying he's the one who people studied, like, Devin Hester and these kinds of like kick returners. He's kind of that he set that bar, and obviously look at these numbers, right? So he kind of set that bar. Because of that, Johnson was voted to his first Pro Bowl and selected as a first team All-Pro. After that year, based on his electric, return game. 76, again, 47 passes, 495 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 403 punt return yards, and 579 kick return yards.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? We're like, ugh.
No, it's...
Boom. Year later, right, 77. Did not start a game at receiver, but he did catch passes. He caught 20 passes for 412 yards and 3 scores. So, because one of those guys that sometimes would play receiver. He just didn't start as receiver, but they would put him in a few times. Yep. Johnson was voted again to his 2nd Pro Bowl, received a 2nd first team All-Pro nod on the strength of his 539 punt return yards and league leading 2 scores. Again, 15.4 yards per return average. He also returned 25 kicks for 630 yards and another score. Unfortunately, in 78, he sustained a knee injury, so he didn't really get to play as much. It was very limited, and his team advanced to the AFC Championship, but they got blown out by the Steelers. Following year, he was still out. So for 2 years, he was played with his knee injury. Again, Houston got blown out by the Steelers again in 79 for the AFC title. Would Johnson have made the difference? I don't know. We'll never know.
You never know now.
Just saying, those 2 years that they did advance to a few, what could have made a difference for them, they were defeated. He did come back in 81. So still bothered. The Houston Oilers released him in 80 because, he was injured. So he went to play for Canada for a little bit in 81, but he proved that he still had it. So even for Montreal, they were not a good team back, at this time, Johnson shined. He had 65 receptions for 1,060 yards with 5 touchdowns and 597 punt return yards. So his 1 year in the CFL showed NFL teams that they could take a shot. Guess who he went to play for? Atlanta. So in 1982, Atlanta decided to take I know, right? Atlanta decided to take a chance on Johnson and signed him for that 82 season. He had 2 receptions for 11 yards just because he was starting, but he also returned punts again, had 273 yards on 9 returns. So that was kind of his first year back. 83, they were like, all right, we're going to give him a more active role. This was under a new coach at the time, Dan Henning. And so he was like, we're going to give you a little bit more of a role. Good idea, because again, White Shoes had a career high 64 receptions for 709 yards and 4 scores. He added 489 punt return yards and another touchdown. Johnson's breakthrough year led to a 3rd Pro Bowl and 1st All-Team. He also that year got named NFL Comeback Player of the Year, right? Because when you put up numbers like that,
Sure.
After an injury and spending a year in Canada,
Right.
they were like, all right, that's cool. So again, 84th with the Falcons, caught 24 passes for 371 yards and 3 touchdowns. However, by that point, he couldn't do the funky chicken because in 84, that's when they passed that Gastineau rule, who used to but the reason they put that rule is because he used to celebrate after sacking quarterbacks.
Yeah, he was an excessive sack quarterback celebration guy, Mark Gastineau for the Jets.
Correct. Yeah. So because of that, no one can celebrate.
Gastineau ruins everything.
Yeah, so because of that.
The no fun league.
Yeah.
That's right. No, NFL. Very Glanville, the no fun league. You know what NFL stands for? Not for long when you make calls like that.
After that rule, that's exactly what people started calling it.
No fun league. NFL, baby.
So fortunately, he couldn't do his funky chicken dance anymore. So he was like, whatever. So he was like, it didn't matter. As we know now that some of that was amended, right? Like, you still can't, obviously you can't celebrate after sacking because it's still a penalty, but you could do your touchdown celebration. So they allowed it back.
Right.
Which is, so there has been an amendment to that rule somewhat, but it has to be a touchdown. That's the key. Touchdown celebrations are okay again. Anyway, but that was just funny because he came back. He's like, "No funky chicken dance."
That's what he's known for,
right? Yeah. So he shrugged it off. Again, cut 62 footballs, right, in 1985 for 830 yards and 5 celebrated touchdowns, just not with the funky chicken dance. Remember, white shoes, right? He still got flair. So, my man still have flair. He retired in 1988. That's when he decided to kind of call it quits. He ended his, he added, before he retired, 3,370, 317 yards, 6 touchdowns on punt returns, and 2,941 yards, 2 scores on kick returns. So again, just massive, massive talent. ended the NFL career with 4,211 yards and 25 touchdowns. Again, think about the fact that he's a kick returner. So most of those touchdowns was as a kick returner, sometimes when they would pay him on offense, right? Yep. But most of that was as a kick returner. Again, this is why, they talk about how Devin Hester used to study this guy, all the, a lot of other big names that we think about who now also kind of run it back, right? But he set that tone. So, again, he made the NFL's 1970s and 1980s all-decade teams. He made the 75th and 100th anniversary all-time teams. Oh. And again, like I said, he got inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in 96. However, he's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's the only person from that class that made the 75th anniversary team who is not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Okay.
That's what they're saying. He's currently the only member of that NFL's 75th anniversary team who's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Yeah, it is. So again, after his retirement, he actually spent some time in the Falcons organization as an assistant strength coach and conditioning coach. Now he's actually coaches high school. He says he actually likes it. He coaches high school in Duluth, Georgia. Okay. And he basically says that he likes working with young people and that basically this is what he was quoted as saying. He's like, I would like to think that the kids are motivated by my NFL experience, but I don't harp on the fact that I played and how long I played. I just tell them that I was given an opportunity and I took advantage of it to the best of my ability. And what's to say that they can't do it with that when that opportunity arises too? But they've got to position themselves in a way that they'll get that chance. Everybody talks, but they don't have a clue what it takes. And I tell them it starts right now. So I actually do love that that's what he's doing, like mentoring youth and telling them and I like that he's not one of those guys that I play for the NFL, right? He's like, but he uses it to motivate, but he doesn't just shove it in their faces. And instead he says in a way as a coach and mentor should, which is if the opportunity comes up, you got to take advantage, right? Again, played in a small school, right? Widener College. I don't think anybody knew what that school was except for football, maybe super diehard football, college football folks. But he took advantage. He still went to the pros, put up monster numbers, set the tone for celebration touchdown, set the tone for kick returner, just legend. And honestly, Pro Football Hall of Fame, I don't know what is your deal. I think to read that stat, that he's the only man who made it to the 75th anniversary team, and he's the only one that's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. That just shows you what the
peers and the sports writers thought.
So, all I'm saying,
they appreciated what White Shoes did, but just the Hall of Fame committee did not, I guess.
Come on, man. Listen, ridiculous. Anyway, but Billy White Shoes Johnson,
ladies and gentlemen. Right, thank you
with
very
the
much.
funky chicken dance. Let's get it. And the white shoes. Because if Joe name is another name, people probably football people know. But
we talk about Joe another time. That's another story.
Broadway.
No, I'm just saying that was his influence. Think about that as a high school kid. You know what I'm saying? What I mean is you get inspired in such weird ways, right?
When you watch football. Absolutely. So. Inspiration can come from anywhere.
Billy White Shoes Johnson. I love it.
Thank you, Delilah, again for another great presentation.
No problem.
Of Diversity with Delilah. Billy White Shoes Johnson.
Yeah, that was a fun one. That was a fun one.
No, it was a good one. But you know what's funny too? Now, again, not taking away from anything you said there, but it's always funny. I don't know if anybody caught it, but she was talking about the cobbler. Why is it that Italians either make great suits or great shoes?
That was his quote. Not mine.
That's what I'm saying, but you think about it. Who makes great suits? Little Italian guys. They make great tailors. And then you got the cobblers were all old Italians.
I didn't say
shoes. Phenomenal. That's all I'm saying. Is little Italian
I just want to put it out there. That wasn't my quote.
Okay.
William.
William, you come and see me. You kids nowadays, you got to respect. Let me make you some shoes.
I'm gonna make you a nice size 10. Come down, you see me in South. We got you covered.
I'm fun, bull. No,
I was laughing. I was laughing when I was reading his quote, though. We had this Italian guy who's a cobbler.
Hey, Nick, does your guy make nice shoes? Is he Italian?
Hey, we don't talk about my guy on the show anymore. You guys tell me I got my guy over there. I'll tell you this. I tell you, no.
That's good.
We keep my guy is going to be known as my guy. I can't give any information more than that.
My guy.
He's just my guy.
My God.
Let us move on, though. Well, I don't know. This is fine. You guys keep going this way, but
No, I'm sorry. No, it's
no. Don't ever apologize, Delilah. Don't ever apologize.
I remember,
yes, Mr. Handy.
I'm sorry. I just remember growing up watching that guy, and I thought that was one of the coolest things that I had ever seen because, nobody else ever did that at the moment.
Right. At that time.
Get it?
It's like,
but here was this guy doing it, like Delilah said, the Soul Train dance, and it was just, and you're right, he did. The next person that I can think about that really had a significant solo touchdown dance behind that was Dion's Dirty Bird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even Dion said he used Billy White shoes.
Like I said, he really